Hi, and welcome to my new studio. It has taken me almost a year to finish the home studio, and let's be honest here, is a home studio ever really finished? I feel like we're changing it up over and over again, but I did want to take you on a tour showing you the progress that I've made. So in today's video I'm gonna show you my synth setup, how I make music, gonna give you some tips and tricks when it comes to audio routings and cable management and all of that stuff that we struggle with. But before that, I also want to say a big thank you to Buso Audio. They make studio furniture and they sponsored the channel with a studio desk. And before I show you the studio, I just want to rewind the clock a bit, about a year, and show you where it all began. We started by just tearing down the original storage rooms, which was a quite fun process. I don't know much about building stuff, but I promise you that tearing stuff down is easy, and it's also a good way to release some of that pent-up frustration. We tore down 4 storage rooms and ended up with a 25-ish square meter room with 3 windows. I then hired help to build the walls, put in a support beam, and fixing up the floors. And since I know my way around FM synthesis, I of course took it upon myself to install the electricity. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Okay, just kidding. Hire professional electricians, which is what I did, and in January of 2024 the renovation was finally finished. And here you can see what it looked like then. But I still had to close down my other studio and move a ton of gear. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend transporting your giant Euro case like this, but it survived. So a big warm welcome, come in and take a look at the new studio. To the right we have the main music area, where I have my Artist Rise 88 sit-stand desk, my big Euro rack, and a keyboard stand so I can have a couple of synths within arm's reach, and I'll talk more later on cable management as well as audio routings. Panning the camera to the left, we have the main video and Dawless jamming area. So here's a big synth stand, it's called the Jaspers, and it's filled with the synths that I'm currently jamming with. And later I'll go over how I've customized my Jaspers, for example hooking up speakers to it. And if we turn to the right, we have the main video area. This is where I shoot all of my synth videos, and I can really recommend ceiling mounting cameras, more on that later. And then we just have an additional table for some Dawless setups, temporary stuff. Since I'm a synth YouTuber, I of course get a lot of questions what I actually do with the gear and how I make music. So this is my main setup here that I use if I just want to produce some music. I have a MIDI keyboard, I have a MIDI controller, this is the Machina, and when it comes to using hardware synths like the Polybrute 12 for example, these are all amazing instruments, very inspirational, but they're not necessary for producing great music. I mean, it's a bonus, it's something you have to spark joy, inspiration and have fun with. So if I just want to make some music real quick, I usually just bring out Machina. Even though my big passion is synthesizers, hardware, things that I can touch and I can tweak the knobs on, I do appreciate using a DAW. The only thing I don't like with this particular setup is that the control keyboard actually doesn't integrate with the Machina like the previous versions. I don't know if they're working on like an update for it, I hope so, but that's something that I really miss, having the controller integrate with Machina directly. Now let's talk a little bit more about the desk here. So since you don't change out your studio desk all that frequently, I had to think really hard about what I needed. So there was a couple of reasons I chose this one, the Artist Rise 88. Now the first one is, of course, that it is height adjustable. Now another reason why I chose this desk is because it has the 88 key keyboard tray, but it's still relatively slim. So it's only 163 or 62 centimeters, I believe, wide. And as you can see here, if it had been any wider, I couldn't have my gear here on the sides. So I needed a pretty slim desk, but with ample space for a larger keyboard or multiple MIDI controllers. The cable management was one thing that took a long time, and it's definitely not perfect, but as you can see, it's okay. And let me reveal the mess underneath here. So this is something you don't see from the room itself when you're working, but yeah, it's a bit of a mess. But most things are actually zip tied to this railing here. And then I have these two cable trays. There's a USB hub, and in these trays I also have power on both sides. And then running here along the floor is actually both USB and audio, and I should really tidy this up. But here we have a patch bay, and there's also a USB hub, so I can hook up my synths via USB to get MIDI and or audio. The patch bay is just for audio, so I just have 8 inputs on it, and the synths and audio connections are patched on the back, and it's just a quick and easy way to get audio from this stand into the main system. And I gotta show you this magical thing here. Here you can see possibly hear noise that is caused by this synthesizer being hooked up both audio into the audio interface and USB into a USB hub. Now I'm taking the USB isolator here and I'm hooking it up to the USB hub. And now if we look at the computer here, there is literally no noise. Which is, yeah, it works like magic. I have no idea how it works, but it works. And over on this side, we're running ADAT as well as word clock behind the tube traps into this little makeshift rack that I have over here. And yeah, don't look too closely on my homemade rack here. I didn't want to go out and buy something, so I just screwed these pieces of wood onto the desk. And you don't see it really when you're working anyway, so who cares? And at the moment, this kind of serves as an audio interface for my big Euro rack. So I can basically take 8 audio channels out of this into this and get it into the computer if I want to. I also have MIDI running here. I have MIDI out running from the 16 rig behind the tube traps and into these modules over here. These are for polyphonic playback, so if I want to make a big polyphonic synth patch, I can use these modules. This is more for drums and mono voices. My main audio interface is the Arturia 16 rig, so it's, like the name suggests, a 16 input audio interface. It's very good for a synth setup because it's 16 line inputs. And you also have 2 XLR inputs here on the front if you need to use a microphone. And as you can see over here, I have input 1 to 8 on the 16 rig patched here on the back. So I have them accessible from the desk itself. Should I want to plug in a synthesizer, for example, directly here. I also have 2 extra outputs over here accessible, so I can do line out from the audio interface to an external effect or setting up a pair of extra speakers. The computer I'm using is a first generation M1 Mac Studio. On the desk I also have the Myo XL MIDI interface, and I have actually connected MIDI cables on the back, so they're just tucked into the desk. And if I ever need to run like a standard MIDI cable to the synths here on the side, I can just take one of those cables and run it that way. And the listening situation is the Eve Audio SC3070s. I bought them for my larger studio, but they also fit this smaller room pretty nicely. I really like 3-way monitors like this, and they also have some built-in DSP, so you can actually tweak the sound with an EQ. I don't really use that a lot because nowadays I use the Arc Studio from IK Multimedia, which lets you calibrate any studio monitors. You basically just save like a preset on this device. So you use software to measure the room and the speakers in the room, and then you save it to the box and just turn this button on and it works. And since I know somebody will ask, these are just normal power sockets, European standard. Nothing special, it's just this weird blue look. I don't really like it. And yeah, they have these lids, which is super impractical. It's a bit of an overkill setup, but it works, and it makes it easy for me to just have everything hooked up and play it whenever I want. And if we turn left from the main desk, there is a door, and that door actually leads to my backyard, and in typical Swedish summer fashion it is raining, and here we actually have a nice little pergola, a quite nice space to have a cup of coffee in between music and video sessions. Next up I want to show you my Dawless jamming area. So this is a Jasper's synth stand, and as you can see it's not fully populated with synths. It's kind of a work in progress, and this is just the stuff that I'm using currently to jam with. And one thing I'm particularly proud of with this setup right now is that I actually have an app on my phone which lets me turn it on. So just one press and it turns on the mixer over here and the whole effects rig as well as the speakers. It's just one click on the Philips Hue app, and I use one of those Philips Hue smart plugs. Speaking about the speakers, let me show you here. This is something people have been asking about. How did I actually mount them? So what I have here is a super clamp. These are common in video production, and I just have it gripping one of the rods here on the Jaspers, and then I use one of these spigots connecting the speaker, which has a little mounting hole on the bottom. Works really well, very sturdy. And these are the IK Multimedia iLoud speakers, which I think are really good for a small room because you can also calibrate them. Here's another cool little thing. I've showed this in a video before. These are rig slaps, I think they're called, and they're actually very useful because you can take cables like so and just slap this around, and they're easy to remove once you inevitably want to change something, which you do all the time. Down here I have a Soundcraft mixer. It's actually a bit too small for my current setup. I would have loved more than 2 auxiliary outputs, and I'll only have 2 stereo returns here. But anyway, it works fine. I also have a big knob, which is a monitor controller. It's passive, and it's just a way to control the audio levels. Then I have a trusted Zoom recorder hooked up with USB power to the headphones output actually of the mixer, just for simplicity's sake, recording a stereo track from the mixer. As I've stated in many previous videos, I don't think that a hardware synth setup is like the most effective way to make music if you want to be super productive, but I do love the jamming aspect of it. And the other day a fan of the channel came over and we just had a good time jamming out, and it's something that's very hard to do when you're both sitting in front of a computer. When you're setting up a Jasper, something I can definitely recommend is also looking at where to place power bricks or power distributors. I'm not sure what's called in English. I have one over here, one over here, one down there, one down there. So I have a couple of ones because if you put a synth up here, for example, usually the power cord from the synth is not long enough to go all the way down. In terms of MIDI, I have a Kenton through box over here. So at the moment I have my Machina here set up as the main sequencer. I tend to change what I use as the main sequencer. Currently it's the Machina Plus, and it's sending MIDI into this box, splitting it out into all the other boxes. And then I have this effects monstrosity here. It's a pedal board with a lot of effects, and all the pedals are running into DF Audio Mini Bay. Shout out to DF Audio, they make some really cool stuff. It's just a way to patch effects together, but more about that in a separate detailed video. The last setup I want to show you in today's tour is my video setup. You can see we have ceiling mounts for the cameras. So this is for the top-down shot. And this is just a mount that has been screwed onto the ceiling. And then there's a magic arm here. And then I just put a camera here, top-down. So this is something I highly recommend because it saves you a lot of space because you don't have to have a lot of tripods on the ground. And the same goes for the lights. And then over here I have another mounting plate as well as another magic arm and my teleprompter, which I use for some videos where I have a script. And then here to the side we have the blue box. It's a mixer and recorder. I use it to record all the audio for my videos. And in terms of microphones, I use these ones here from Rode Audio, so wireless pro mics. I use them for most of my videos. And because I sometimes have guests over, I actually have speakers hooked up over here, and they are connected to that Nero monitor controller over there, so I can adjust the audio levels. And something that I'm gonna use a lot more in future videos, and something that I'm quite happy with, is this green screen over here. So I can just pull this down and suddenly I have a green screen and I'm standing in a beautiful ocean, miles away from the Swedish rainy weather. And I also have that light over there, which is an RGB light from Amaran, I think. I can just switch colors. What else do I have in the studio? Well, I have this. This is a microphone boom, and on top of it is my cable hanger. I think it's called Hex something. It's actually super nice. I know the guy who makes it, had it for a long time. Definitely recommend. And over here is what is basically my experimentation area. Here I just put gear that I'm testing currently. I often use the Digitact. This is the Digitact 2 as like the main sequencer to try out new gear. I'm currently testing the S4 sampler here from Torso. And I have a mixer here, and there's a snake running here with inputs and stuff. I probably should have a patch bay here, but I ran out of patch bays. So yeah, this is just kind of a temporary thing. I might use this desk for something else in the future or remove it depending on what I need. So I hope I managed to answer a lot of questions about my studio and how to set things up. Remember that what works for me might not work for you, and I'm pretty sure that I will change things up again real soon. I tend not to stick with a setup for that long, but I've also tried and make the studio work in a way where it's flexible, where I can change synths in and out. For example, in my Dawless setup over here, it's easy to just remove something, bring something in, and that's the whole idea. And that would be, if I were to say something at the end here, it would be use patch bays. Make sure that you have a lot of patch bays in your studio for patching things in and out, instead of just having to remove cables from the audio interface or mixer directly. Patch bays is really nice. I probably need to buy a couple of more. And yeah, that was pretty much everything. So yeah, I'm gonna get out of here now. Have fun in my studio. Don't break anything. Be a good Dawless jammer, and yeah, I'll see you later.